Hi guys, sorry about that. I hope that you all can come back in here and see Miss Lucy. We were doing it and it decided to crash on me again. I think tomorrow we're going to use a computer because my phone is not having it. It's not enjoying the Facebook app very much. So I hope you guys find your way back here. It will be recorded and posted after. So if you have had questions that didn't get answered, please hop on here and ask them again. I was answering a question about talons versus claws before we cut out. So really quickly, the talons and the claws are different because we call talons this whole foot of our owls. So the whole foot that you see Miss Lucy picking up is the talon, and they're very strong, and the reason that they have their own name and they're not just called a foot or you know, a claw or something is because it's specialized to be able to grab and hold on to food. So they are usually a lot different than a normal foot. They have a different set of adaptations in there. They're a different anatomy, so we call them talons versus feet. And then the claws are these little nails that you see right here. So that's what's going to kind of be doing the grabbing, the stabbing. And they are very sharp, especially with these tiny little owls. Lucy and our screech owls actually are known to talon very hard. Because they're so tiny, they'll go right through the skin if you're not careful. So we always wear leather gloves with these guys. Sarah would like to know, what is the biggest animal that Lucy could pick up? Probably about like the size of a large mouse. Mice can get fairly big, so usually that's about what we say is a large mouse. Sometimes we'll also give her chicks for a meal, and she does like that, so she will pick up chicks too. It really just depends on how far she needs to go. So if she only needs to hop around a little bit, she can pick up something as large as maybe like a chipmunk. But so she is going to be able to pick up quite substantial things with those talons. Hi everybody, I'm glad you're back. Good morning from Rhode Island. Good morning, Sarah. Hi, Austin and Abby. Hello. Abby is hard at work. She is feeding baby squirrels like there's no tomorrow. She's getting a little sick of it, I think. But hi, Austin. Hello. How long do these guys live? That's great. So these guys are a small species of owl, which means that they're not going to live as long as a larger species of owl. Usually with our raptors, the rule is the larger they are, the longer they live. So, so these guys are going to live to be about 5 or 6 in the wild, and then in captivity we've had screech owls live to be up to 13 here at the center. So we have very high hopes that we'll have Lucy with us for a long time. She's only 2 now, but they can live much longer in captivity than they would in the wild. A larger owl like a great horned owl or a snowy owl can live to be 40 plus years in captivity because they are much larger, and eagles have been known to live up to 50 years. So we're very fortunate that we'll have this lady with us for a long time. Sarah, she weighs, today we weighed her and she was 170 grams, so that's like a third to a half of a pound. I'm not quite sure exactly, but it's about half a pound is usually what we say for our screech owls. It's like about the weight of like a half empty can of soda or something like that. It's not a lot. She is a little bit more muscular than some other birds that are about her size. She does have quite a bit of muscle on her because she is a female. Female owls and raptors do tend to be larger than their male counterparts, so they are pretty muscular. They want to be able to ward off prey, so they're going to be quite muscly and large. Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Chuck. Good morning, Elise. Will she be bred? So we don't usually have babies result from any pairings that we have here at the center. We do have some owls that live with another mate, because that is how they would like to live in the wild. They would usually live with a mate for a lot of the year. So we do have some owls that live in pairs, like our barred owls, Byron and Fern, and our great horned owls, Gaia and Galileo. Lucy does not have a mate at the moment. She probably won't really ever have one because she is imprinted. So she doesn't really understand that she's an owl. She kind of thinks she's a person. She acts a lot like a person. She often will chat with her handlers. She prefers the company of her handlers to other owls. So we probably won't have her live with another owl, just because she would not really enjoy that or recognize that owl as being of her species. And usually we don't have any sort of babies result from any of the pairings that we have from our owls. So raptors, when they are mating and when they're in their breeding seasons, do a lot of things ahead of mating and laying eggs. They have a whole courtship ritual that's laid out, and their instincts to do that and the hormones that cause them to mate and to go through all those things are usually in relation to temperature and light and all of those sorts of things. They're doing a lot of moving around. There's a lot that goes into their mating behaviors that we don't really understand. They also really need peace and quiet. They need it to be very safe. They're not going to have a nest of babies in a place that doesn't feel comfortable for them, because those babies would not make it most likely. So they're going to wait until they feel really safe and comfortable to have babies, and that is not really here. We are constantly going in and out of their enclosures, feeding them, cleaning up after them, and a wild owl would not feel comfortable having a nest in that area. They might feel comfortable, you know, living in that space themselves, but raising a baby in that space would probably not be something that they would be really happy about. In fact, when we have little baby owls, and we have an owlet right now that is potentially going to be fostered by our great horned owls, we will put them in a very secluded area of the enclosure, and Gaia, our female great horned owl, completely changes her behaviors. She turns very defensive of that baby. She gets very fierce and doesn't really like us as much as she normally would if she didn't have a baby. So there's a lot that goes into it, and we've never had an accidental birth of a bird before. So that is not something that we usually see, and we're also not really set up to be a captive breeding program. So there are some places that do that if they're working specifically on like a conservation issue or an endangered species. They might be doing that, but it's very challenging and very cost consuming. It is very expensive. So that's not something that we're set up for. If it happened, we would most likely have them be raised up and released, which is really cool. Let's see. We have a question about eagles. Could an eagle pick up a grown Maine Coon cat? Yeah, probably. They are probably not going to bother, though. We have eagles that have come back to the area. So eagles are really like scavengers. They're like big gulls, really. They are very fierce, still very great predators, but for the most part, not going to go after something as challenging as a cat to pick up, although never say never. People do ask us a lot about great horned owls and cats, and that's always possible. But eagles are really usually scavenging more than anything. So I would say probably not. Cats are also very savvy. And another thing that we usually say is, you know, we always recommend keeping our cats inside, because when they go out, they become a part of the food chain. So they might eat something that's wild, and then they also might get eaten by something that's wild. So it's always a concern. It's safer for the cat and it's safer for the wildlife to keep them indoors. But of course, some cats, it's really hard to do that with. They just don't want to stay inside. But that's the risk, is that they become part of the food chain when they go out there. So maybe not an eagle, but maybe a coyote or an owl. Usually we don't see that happening nearly as much as cats and wildlife getting hit by cars. Also, if the cat's staying close to your property, close to where there are people, many wild animals are not going to come that close. If you're outside with them, they're probably not going to be bothered, but it's always a possibility. That's why it's just safer to keep them inside. Hello, good morning. Chuck would like to know, what time of day would you most likely see these owls? So these owls are actually not going to be out during the day, very much if at all. Screech owls are a small little species of owls, so they're about as big as my hand here, and they are very strictly nocturnal because of that small size. So they need to be constantly worried about predators. They're very much concerned with staying safe, staying well camouflaged, relying on the cover of darkness to keep themselves safe. And so when we go out during the day, they're probably going to be asleep in a little nest cavity in a tree and blending in really well, and we usually don't get to see them. If you know like of an exact spot where a nest is, you might see them kind of basking in the sun. They're very cute. So they're not going to be really seen during the day. Some other species of owls are known to come out during the day, specifically barred owls. They're very kind of brazen that way. If it's overcast or raining like today, then they might come out. If it's been really cold the night before and they weren't hunting, they might come out, but usually not this tiny little species of owl. Let's see. Have you ever had a rescue a full family? I don't believe so. Usually what we have are owlets that have fallen from their nests. These guys usually will nest like our great horned owls nest up to like 50-60 feet up in the air, so it can be really high up in a pine tree, a nice tall pine. So if they fall from the nest, they can sometimes break bones, or it's just really challenging to get them back up there. So usually when we get nest issues, we are seeing just orphans, or maybe an adult that got injured in a fall or something like that. Usually not the whole nest. That's not normally something we see. Usually it's a baby that's fallen from the nest. I know, she's so pretty with the eyelashes. So those are actually tiny little feathers. Let's see how close she'll let us get to her. But, hi. They are actually tiny little feathers. Feather eyelashes. She's very sweet. I've been hearing barred owls communicating with each other. Paul? Yes, so barred owls are most likely in the phase where their babies are nestlings right now, and they will make a lot of whining sounds right now. When they get hungry, they'll make a lot of like creepy, like wheezing sounds is the best way to describe it. And they will do that when they're begging for food, so you'll hear a lot of it's very weird. I can't really do it. But so that's going on now, and then they'll start branching out a little bit soon. They'll start kind of taking their steps onto the branches around the nest. Those guys are also cavity nesters, so if you have nest boxes for owls, they might also occupy one. And yeah, you'll start hearing that begging sound coming from the nest, and it's very eerie and creepy, but it's a sign that they're babies, and they're very cute. They're usually tiny little fuzz balls. They're covered in white downy feathers to keep them warm, but they look a little kooky. They look like Muppets. So cats almost eaten by a fox yesterday. Yep. So when cats go outside, that is the challenge, right? Is they are a part of the food chain. Yeah, and then we have an owl eating a chicken story. That is definitely something that will happen if an owl is starving or having a hard time finding food, or if they're like a first-year bird that's inexperienced, they might look at a chicken as an easy source of prey. I mean, they're literally in a pen. So that's why we always recommend being very careful with chicken coops, making sure that they're very well covered and contained. Why do they nest in pine trees? So that's great horned owls that we were discussing, like to nest in those pine trees. They're very tall. Usually the crooks of the trees are very like nice for a nest to be built. They will also use like old abandoned nests from ravens and red-tailed hawks and things like that. So they are usually looking for those really, really high up nests, and pines are really the tallest trees that we have in our area. So that's why they like those. How do you tell the males and females apart? That's a really good question. So with owls and most raptors, it's actually really challenging to tell them apart just based on their coloring. They are usually pretty much identical in coloration. With these species of owls, we dropped the mealworm, oh no. I'll grab you another one. With this species of owl, with the screech owls, they do have a few different color, you keep dropping them. They do have a few different color variations. Uh-oh, it's Shelly. And they will appear in either a red color like Lucy here, or a gray color, or a brownish color. And they can have all different colors in a nest, but usually it's related to the genetics of the parents. So it's kind of like Labradors. So when you have the nest of babies, it can be really challenging to figure out who's a male and who's a female, because apart from slight size differences, like very, very slight size differences, it's very hard to tell. So Lucy here weighs 170 grams, so about a half pound. A male might weigh up to like 150 grams, but the likelihood that you could really see that much difference is very challenging. So it's very hard. You have to weigh them, their weight ranges, and then sometimes even you'll have a really big male or a really small female right in the middle. That's hard to tell. And the only way to tell is if they're passed away, you can do a necropsy, or if you send out blood work, you can get them genetically tested. So we do know for sure Lucy's a female because we got her genetics tested. So we know. But she's also pretty large. A male would be very, very big if he were that size. Will owls nest in an open nest like hawks and eagles use? Not this species of owl, not usually. Larger species like great horns, yes, but not this species. They like a more protected little nest cavity, so a little hole in a tree that was pecked out by like a woodpecker would be perfect. That's why we always recommend leaving up dead tree snags when you can, because they're wonderful nest sites for all sorts of birds, including nuthatches, songbirds, and little owls. How long do they live? So these guys in the wild could live to be maybe 5 or 6 years old, and then in captivity they can live much, much longer. They can live up to we've had them live up to 13 in captivity with us, so we're very lucky. We'll have her for a long, long time. Where do you find these owls? So these guys are found all throughout the eastern seaboard. Eastern screech owls are found along the eastern part of the country, and then we have western screech owls that live out on the other side of the Rockies. They're really very similar species. They just don't intermingle because they can't get beyond those mountain ranges, but they do look very similar. And eastern screech owls are found really anywhere there's a forest along the eastern seaboard. So you'll see them all the way up through Maine, and like southern Maine, and then they'll go all the way down into South Carolina, Georgia, Florida. So they're very common. All right, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that you had so many questions. We're gonna sign off and let Miss Lucy here get back to bed. We did have to wake her up to join us today, so we're gonna put her back to bed and let her enjoy the weather outside. These guys do love to sit in the rain, so we'll let her go back out into her enclosure. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow with another one of these morning meetings. Please let us know if you have any questions that we didn't get to in the comments, and we'll try to answer them down below. Thank you guys so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful Monday. Bye.